This is not breaking news. This is not a scandal. This is not about one person, one country, or one bad decision. This is about something quieter than that and more dangerous. It doesn't arrive with sirens. It arrives with empty shelves that look temporary, with transactions that fail, just for today, with small rules that feel reasonable in the moment. Nothing collapses all at once. That's the lie that keeps people calm. What actually fails first is trust. Trust that tomorrow will look like yesterday. Trust that the system remembers you exist. Right now, somewhere very close to you, that trust is thinning. Not gone, just thin enough to tear. And once it tears, it doesn't stay local. It moves through money, through borders, through people. If you stay with me, I'm going to show you how that tear spreads. Not loudly, not dramatically, but fast. Because the most dangerous systems don't break, they slide. And once the slide starts, stopping it is no longer the question. Here's the mistake most people make. They look for a villain, a leader, a party, a single decision they can point to and say, that's where it went wrong. But systems don't fail that way. What actually controls the system now is not ideology or speeches or promises. It's cash flow, hard currency, who has it, who doesn't, and who is allowed to touch it. When a country can no longer earn what it needs, it starts borrowing time. Reserves become oxygen tanks. Subsidies become life support. Remittances become quiet, unofficial welfare. Nothing looks broken yet because the lights are still on. The shelves are still stocked barely. The money still works most days. That's the illusion. The system appears alive because something external is keeping it breathing. But once survival depends on money coming from outside the system is no longer in control of itself. And when control slips, the response is never reform first. It's restriction. And that's where this turns, because restriction doesn't fix the system. It reveals what has already failed. And what comes next always surprises the people living inside it. The most dangerous changes don't feel like change. They feel like adjustment. Before, money moved freely enough that you didn't think about it. You earned it. You spent it. You saved a little. You helped family when you could. Now, every movement is noticed. Every transfer is delayed. Every exception requires permission. Before, shortages were rare and embarrassing. Now they're explained. Temporary, external, out of anyone's control. Before, leaving was a choice, an ambition, a plan for the future. Now it's a calculation. Not if you leave, but when this is the silent shift. The moment a society stops asking how to improve and starts asking how to endure, nothing dramatic announces it. No emergency broadcast, no official admission. It shows up in smaller ways, in professionals quietly disappearing, in jobs left unfilled, in skills that take decades to train and minutes to lose. And here's the part that matters. Once this shift begins, it doesn't reverse on its own. It accelerates because every person who leaves makes staying harder for the ones who remain. And the system feels that loss long before the headlines do. There's a moment when theory stops mattering. It's when something small, ordinary, and personal suddenly doesn't work. A transfer that's supposed to clear a withdrawal you've made 100 times before. Money that already exists. Money that is already yours. And then the screen turns red. Not hacked, not stolen, just unavailable. In other countries, this has happened quietly, under the language of temporary measures, stability, national necessity. People didn't panic at first. They waited. They tried again tomorrow. But tomorrow didn't fix it. Because when a system is running out of hard currency, it doesn't announce collapse. It rationed access, first for corporations, then for banks, then for households, especially households connected to money from outside the country. This is where survival starts, depending on exceptions, on favors, on timing, on luck. If this feels abstract, stay with me. Because this is not the collapse. This is the warning shot. And once it fires, the next move isn't economic. It's human. Here's the mechanism most people never see while it's happening. When money becomes scarce, power concentrates around permission. Who can buy dollars? Who can move them? Who can keep them? On paper, the system still exists. Banks still open. Accounts still have balances. Prices are still posted. But underneath, a second system takes over. One where access matters more than income. Connections matter more than work. Timing matters more than rules. If you are inside the circle, you convert weak money into strong money. If you are outside, you absorb the loss. This is how damage is distributed without ever being voted on. The state doesn't need to seize everything. It only needs to control conversion. Because once people realize their savings can't leave, can't change form, can't escape, they stop behaving like citizens. They behave like evacuees. They spend fast. They hoard goods. They move value into anything that can't be frozen. And every one of those rational choices makes the system weaker. This is the trap. The harder authorities try to hold money in place, the faster people try to turn themselves into something mobile. And once that instinct takes hold, it doesn't go away. It looks for exits. Once the exits start forming, everything speeds up. Lines get longer. Paperwork slows. Rules change without notice. Hospitals lose staff. Classrooms lose teachers. Entire departments run on half the people they had last year. This isn't collapse yet. It's hollowing. The system still stands, but it's lighter than it looks. Money still circulates, but it does less work. Wages still arrive, but they don't buy time anymore. Electricity still runs until it doesn't. And here's what makes this phase unstable. The people leaving aren't the poorest. They're the ones with options. With passports, with skills that work somewhere else. Every departure raises the load on the ones who stay. More patients per doctor, more work per engineer, more pressure on systems already stretched thin. At first, this feels manageable. Then it doesn't, because there's a point where loss compounds faster than it can be replaced. And when that point is crossed, the question stops being, how bad can this get? And becomes, how fast does it spread? This is where it reaches you. Not as an abstract crisis, not as a chart, but as a daily calculation. You start planning around uncertainty. You check balances more often. You buy extras not because you need them now, but because you might not be able to later. You help family when you can. Quietly, regularly, because that money isn't support anymore. It's survival. And here's the cruel turn. The system begins to depend on your help to stay stable. Your private lifelines replace public ones. Your sacrifices fill the gaps left by policy. That works until it doesn't, because the moment those lifelines are interrupted, everything snaps at once. Not gradually, simultaneously, people who were holding on let go. Not emotionally, logistically. They stop waiting. They stop hoping. They move. If this feels personal, it should. Because the pressure isn't designed to break systems first. It's designed to break patience. Stay with me. Because what happens next doesn't respect borders. Once people start moving, the system stops being local. Money crosses borders first. Then people follow. Then consequences arrive where no one planned for them. Banks far away discover exposure they didn't advertise. Tourism-dependent economies feel shocks they didn't cause. Cities absorb new populations faster than housing. Schools or hospitals can adjust. Nothing looks connected at first. A stressed bank here. Crowded shelters there. Budgets quietly revised downward. But this is how systemic spillover works. Not through headlines, through balance sheets. A frozen transfer in one country becomes a liquidity problem in another. A closed exit route reroutes pressure somewhere else. Every attempt to contain the damage simply redirects it, and the farther the effects travel, the harder they are to trace back to the source. That's why this phase is misunderstood. It doesn't feel like collapse. It feels like unrelated problems happening all at once. They aren't unrelated. They're synchronized. And once synchronization sets in, control becomes guesswork because no one is steering anymore. They're reacting. From here, the future doesn't split into dozens of possibilities. It narrows to 3. The first is adjustment. Controls loosen just enough. Access widens selectively. The system survives by bending, not fixing itself. Life continues. Thinner, harder, but recognizable. The second is erosion. Restrictions tighten. Money slows. More people leave. Steadily, relentlessly. Nothing breaks all at once. The system just becomes smaller every month. And then there is rupture. That's when access shuts suddenly. Transfers freeze. Exits close. Confidence disappears in days, not years. Rupture doesn't announce itself as policy. It arrives as panic disguised as order. This is where timing matters, because once the system tips into this path, decisions made earlier determine who moves first and who is forced to move later. And here's the part that should unsettle you. From inside the system, these 3 futures look identical right up until they don't. There is no clear signal that tells people which path they're on. Only hindsight, which means the most important decisions are always made before certainty arrives. And certainty never arrives in time. I'm not going to tell you how this ends, because systems like this don't end cleanly. They thin, they strain, and then they surprise everyone who thought they had more time. What matters now isn't prediction. It's attention to the small signals people dismiss as noise, delays, restrictions, rules that change quietly and stay changed. History doesn't repeat because people forget facts. It repeats because the early warnings don't feel urgent enough. By the time collapse looks obvious, it's already traveled. Through money, through borders, through lives. If you want to understand what comes next, you have to stop watching for explosions and start watching for silence. For the moment the system stops explaining itself. This isn't about fear. It's about readiness. In the next video, I'm going to show you where pressure moves after the first system gives way, who absorbs it, who profits from it, and why the second shock is always bigger than the first. Stay with me. Because once this starts moving, looking away doesn't slow it down. And the people who understand the pattern early are never the ones caught asking what just happened.